am trained as a food scientist. I went and I got my bachelor's and my master's both in food science and specifically focused on product development. So I started off in high school doing a lot of baking and fell in love with just using whole food ingredients, infusing them into things like cupcakes and what. For example, I'd use eggnog and put it into a cake and then put a custard in the middle that was infused with eggnog and then top it with a buttercream that had eggnog in it. So very specific example, but that got my bachelor's, my master's food science, focused on product and flavors into developing some of these more consumer packaged good type of products. While I was in grad school, I decided I would take advantage of the opportunity that was provided to me with the addition of a hemp science program at the school that I attended, and decided that I was going to take some cannabis courses while I was there. So I took processing of cannabis and then pharmacology of cannabis and was able to learn quite a bit. And before I graduated, I was picked up by a big multi-state operator in the cannabis space, Curaleaf, and I started to do product development and formulations for them. So it was there that I really started playing with cannabis in a way. I had been a consumer for years prior, but had not really worked with it in the capacity that I was about to do so at Curaleaf. So that was very targeted towards using distillate, stripping away everything else from cannabis and using just the THC, like my partner was saying, really targeting the drug effects without any sort of medicinal properties to it. And really, the thing that I fell in love with there was, again, having to do with flavor. So a lot of these things taste really bad when you strip them down, especially when you're talking about THC and you're trying to put it into water soluble products like beverages. When you put it into gummies, sometimes it can taste really gross. So I really loved playing around and trying to make these things taste better. Of course, none of the things that I was provided with in my lab were things that I really wanted to put in my body. So I ended up working with a lot of things, putting a lot of products out there that I wouldn't necessarily consume myself. And that's something that, I'm really happy to no longer be a part of. But that was, thank you. Yeah, that was a very interesting experience. I worked on a lot of products, from the emulsions, which was trying to make cannabinoids into a more water-soluble, water-dispersible format, and then also worked on a lot of gummies, tablets, tinctures, beverage enhancers, you name it. I probably had my hands on it at some point. I took a little pivot out of the cannabis industry. It really did a number on me, so decided to pivot away, worked in craft beer for a little bit and managed the lab at a craft brewery, in which the biggest takeaway, I think, was that nobody actually cared about the quality. They just wanted to say that they cared about the quality. So ran into a lot of disagreements, I would say, with my superiors there, just because it was something that I really cared about was quality. Something that I still care about is quality. And it didn't really seem to resonate with these larger corporations. Took a third last final try at corporate and ended up pivoting back into cannabis, but this time in the hemp and dietary supplement portion of it. And this was something that, I got in the door after, was a little bit hesitant about joining the company after my experience working with Curaleaf. And what really got me in the door was I had a phone call with their CEO, and he was like, just saying preaching to the choir, basically telling me how he thought it was so disturbing that we could buy gummies at a gas station and, you could buy 500 milligram infused sodas at your local gas station in Florida where I was living at the time. And, he was preaching against Delta 8 and different isomerized versions of cannabinoids. And that really got my interest peaked. And a couple months after I started there, they turned around and they bought the largest Delta 8 manufacturer in the United States. Yeah, so not great. And as my partner mentioned briefly before, this is because the company was entirely funded by Big Tobacco. So this was one of those companies that would, take all these old cotton and tobacco fields, flip them into hemp fields, source all their crude from it and then completely strip it down and break it into all these different compounds. And then they would synthetically, convert these compounds into THC, whether it was Delta 8, Delta 9, some of the other HHC, some of the other derivatives that you can get. But yeah, that was my time in dietary supplements and cannabis. It was really interesting because I got to see the way that cannabinoids and different botanicals and herbs interacted with each other in a medicinal sense, but it was always without the true medicinal part of cannabis, right? Because there's this thing called the entourage effect, as I'm sure people who know cannabis, you might have heard this term before. It's the term that talks about all the compounds in the plant working together to provide you with this medicinal effect. So not just the THC, not just the CBD, we're talking a bunch of different minor cannabinoids, and then the terpenes as well, those aromatic compounds really help produce a medicinal effect. So, I'm no longer with that company. I'm no longer at that job. And my goal now is to make products that are better for you, and not necessarily consumer packaged goods, but more so working with these medicinal herbs and these medicinal plants and cannabis in a way that, synergistically these can provide some sort of health benefit. Yeah, and I'm totally open for any questions that anybody has. But I think that'll do it. Yeah. Where am I working at now? So right now, Alex, my partner, and I run a team called High SociEATy, and that's where we do a lot of different dab pairings and what else? Just a lot of educational, I would say a lot of education forward events that combine cannabis and, food, cannabis and tea, some of these other things, and then also some consulting on the side for some of these companies who I'm hoping they're more of just people who are wanting to start better for you brands. And so I'm doing some of that consulting work on the side. Hopefully can bring some better products to market, because honestly, it's kind of disturbing when I look out there. And after seeing everything that I've seen in the industry, it's like I can't recommend any of these products to my family and my friends. I started asking questions at my previous company, and they did not like the questions that I was asking. And that pretty much should tell you all you need to know about the hemp industry. They don't want to investigate any of the things that maybe they should be investigating in order to put a safe product out there. So. Like as in using the hemp seed? So I am familiar with not anybody in California. There's one company that I know does it, and does it seemingly from the outside pretty well. And they're called Victory Hemp, and they're located in Kentucky. But that's really the only one that I know that's really doing anything with hemp seed. I think a lot of companies are still stuck on, I worked on some projects in grad school with hemp seed, and a lot of companies have problems with stabilizing things that have hemp seeds. I think like hemp overall is very new, to a lot of food scientists, to a lot of consumers. And so I think that there's been some roadblocks there with getting anything hemp related to market. Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. So actually the shirt that I'm wearing right now, it has this cute little hemp recycle sign. But this was part of an initiative that I was part of in my undergraduate, where we tried to lobby our school to get hemp research allowed on campus, which was unsuccessful. And to this day, they will not allow any sort of hemp research, which is crazy, because they're an agricultural hub, the college that I went to for my undergrad. But it is totally a lack of funding, because it's, from what I understand, for at least as it pertains to some of these more food science type of programs, it's the big roadblock has been the big wine donors, because they really don't want cannabis in any capacity entering research and whatnot. I heard it was the big wine industry and then the big cotton industry at my last school, or at my first school, that were really the roadblockers for any sort of research. Yeah.